President Donald Trump has been making bold claims about a manufacturing boom in America, specifically about car factories springing up across the country like never before. But when you dig into what's actually happening, the numbers tell a very different story. And the truth reveals something far more damaging to his credibility than he probably realized. Trump has been painting this picture of unprecedented growth, telling audiences that we have so many car company factories under construction or being designed right now. He's claimed that companies from China, Mexico, and Europe are flocking to build in America, and that car factories are coming back in ways we've never seen. It's the kind of sweeping narrative that sounds impressive at rallies, but it's also the kind of claim that's easy to verify. And when industry experts looked into it, they found something disturbing. He's making claims that simply don't match reality.
We've been hearing from him that Biden let in 25 million migrants. That's up from President Trump's former claim of 21 million. Even that was false. So the actual number is less than half of that, even if you count the millions who were rapidly expelled from the country under COVID-era immigration provisions. So not even close. President Trump again said that President Biden provided $350 billion worth of aid to Ukraine. That's also not even close, even generously by independent expert estimates. The actual number is about half.
Sam Fiorani from Auto Forecast Solutions put it bluntly when examining Trump's assertions. We're seeing underutilized plants being filled with products that were previously imported. There is no boom in new builds. That's a devastating blow to Trump's central claim. What's actually happening is far more tactical and much less impressive than Trump wants you to believe. The reality is that automakers are making strategic moves at existing facilities to sidestep Trump's own tariffs. Take Nissan, for example. They're planning to make more Rogue SUVs at their Tennessee and Mississippi plants while reducing imports from Japan. This isn't some grand new construction project. It's companies adapting to avoid the 15% levies Trump imposed on Japanese vehicles. It's defensive maneuvering, not the industrial renaissance Trump is claiming credit for. But Trump's approach to American manufacturing reveals something even more troubling.
Today, speaking to a sea of generals and admirals whose experience was forged by 2 decades of foreign wars, the commander-in-chief said their chief enemy was domestic.
We should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military.
The Trump administration has deployed active-duty Marines and National Guard to Los Angeles, as well as guardsmen to Washington, D.C., but they've spent more time strolling than training. And President Trump vows to deploy troops into Chicago, Memphis, and Portland.
Defending the homeland is the military's first and most important priority. That's what it is. Only in recent decades did politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, while America is under invasion from within.
Much of what he's touting as his success is actually the unwinding of progress made under his predecessor. The auto industry's real investment boom happened during the Biden administration, driven by the massive shift toward electric vehicles. And now, under Trump, companies are pulling back from those EV commitments and pivoting back to gasoline-powered vehicles. General Motors provides a perfect example of this backward momentum. In June, GM announced it would retool a factory in suburban Detroit to build gas-powered pickup trucks and the Cadillac Escalade SUV. Sounds impressive, right? Except this move partially reverses a multi-billion-dollar plan announced in 2022 to make that same factory GM's hub of electric vehicle truck production. Trump is literally celebrating the dismantling of more ambitious, forward-looking projects. The numbers tell the real story of what happened during the Biden years versus what's happening now. AlixPartners tracked capital investments by major automakers, including GM, Ford, Stellantis, Tesla, Rivian, and Lucid. During Trump's first term from 2017 through 2020, these companies spent about $21 billion annually. But during Biden's 4 years, their spending averaged about $38 billion per year, nearly double Trump's numbers. Most of that investment was related to electric vehicles and the future of transportation. From 2000 to September 2024, companies announced over $208 billion of investments in electric vehicle manufacturing, creating about 240,000 jobs. More than half of that investment was announced after Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. About 3/4 of that investment was under construction or operational by October 2024. That's what a real manufacturing boom looks like, and it happened before Trump returned to office. The Biden administration's approach created what experts called something of a renaissance in new automobile manufacturing investment. Manufacturing construction spending, adjusted for inflation, doubled since the end of 2021. Real investment in factory construction reached all-time highs for 9 consecutive quarters. This wasn't just talk or announcements. This was actual money flowing into actual construction projects. But Trump's claims about new plant construction face another fundamental problem. The timeline doesn't add up. Building a major auto assembly plant takes years, not months. Industry experts explain that permitting alone can take 6 to 12 months. Construction takes another 12 to 18 months or more. Then there's tooling and ramping up production, which can take another year or more. The Hyundai plant in Georgia that Trump likes to tout took roughly 2.5 years to construct, and that was considered relatively quick. Doug Betts from JD Power's automotive division explains that these facilities require thousands of acres of land and millions of square feet of factory space. It's a very, very complicated process, he said. Mark Wakefield from Alex Partners notes that if you're building a brand new plant, you're going lightning fast to get it done in 2 years, and you have to have everything ready to go. More likely, it's in the 4-year type of range. So when Trump claims that 11 massive car factories are in the process of being built just months into his presidency, he's either fundamentally misunderstanding how manufacturing works, or he's deliberately misleading the public. This pattern of exaggeration extends beyond just manufacturing. Throughout his presidency, Trump has consistently made sweeping claims about his achievements, celebrating achievements that never actually materialized.
And we get a chance to see it every day, and I'm honored that this morning you all firsthand get to see it as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the 45th and 47th President of the United States, our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump.
Thank you very much, Pete. Great job you're doing, too. Fantastic job. I've never walked into a room so silent before. This is very... Oh, don't laugh. You're not allowed to do that. You know what? Just have a good time. And if you want to applaud, you applaud. And if you want to do anything you want, you can do anything you want. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank. There goes your future. But you just feel nice and loose, okay? Because we're all on the same team. And I was told that, sir, you won't hear a murmur in the room. I said, we got to loosen these guys up a little bit. So you just have a good time. But I want to thank Secretary Hegseth and General Kane, General Raisin Kane for a reason, they call him that. When I heard his name, I said, you're the guy I'm looking for. The Joint Chiefs of Staff and so many others in this room who together represent the greatest and most elite fighting force in
The infrastructure, planning, and investment decisions for any significant new construction would have been made years before he took office. The White House has tried to support Trump's claims by pointing to announcements from Hyundai, Honda, and Stellantis. But as multiple fact-checkers have noted, these are mostly reallocations of investments at existing facilities, not new plants being built. When Trump says automobile plants being built, he's conflating expansion of existing facilities with entirely new construction, a distinction that matters enormously in terms of scale, investment, and job creation. David Adams, president of Global Automakers of Canada, directly disputed Trump's claims that automakers are leaving Canada for U.S. plants. The notion that everybody is vacating Canada to produce in the U.S. doesn't jibe with reality on the ground, he said. Adams acknowledged that Trump's aggressive tariffs could eventually reshape North American auto production, but added, "We're not there yet." The pattern becomes even clearer when you look at what's happening with electric vehicle investments. Companies like Volvo, Ford, and Mercedes-Benz that had made ambitious EV commitments are now pulling back from those goals. The Financial Times found that roughly 40% of the investments funded since the Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS Act were paused or delayed, totaling $84 billion. This represents a massive retreat from the forward-looking investments that characterized the previous administration. Trump's approach to manufacturing policy reveals a fundamental backward orientation. Instead of building on the EV investment boom that positioned America to compete in the industries of the future, his policies are incentivizing companies to return to older technologies and production methods. This might provide some short-term political benefits, but it risks leaving American manufacturing behind as the global economy transitions toward cleaner technologies. The international context makes Trump's approach even more problematic. China controls over 50% of the processing capacity for key EV battery inputs like lithium, cobalt, and graphite. China's influence over the EV supply chain extends to around 90% in manufacturing and processing of numerous battery materials and minerals. While the Biden administration was working to build domestic capacity in these critical sectors, Trump's policies are essentially conceding these future industries to Chinese dominance. Even more revealing is how Trump's claims contradict his own previous statements about the auto industry. During his first term, he made similar boastful claims about auto plant construction that were later debunked by fact-checkers. In 2019, he claimed that auto plants hadn't built one in decades, and now they're all over the place, ignoring plants that had been announced in 2015 by Volvo and Mercedes-Benz. He falsely claimed there hadn't been a new auto plant built in 40 years, when General Motors had built a plant in Lansing Delta Township that was completed in 2006. The pattern is consistent. Trump makes sweeping claims about manufacturing success, takes credit for investments and decisions made by others, and ignores the actual data about what's driving industrial development. His latest claims about a construction boom follow the same playbook, but they're even easier to debunk because the timeline is so compressed and the actual evidence is so readily available. What makes Trump's current claims particularly damaging is that they're not just wrong, they're actively counterproductive. By misrepresenting what's actually happening in American manufacturing, Trump is making it harder to have honest conversations about industrial policy and economic development. His focus on short-term political messaging over long-term strategic thinking risks undermining America's competitive position in the global economy. The real story of American auto manufacturing over the past several years is one of significant investment and forward-looking transformation, followed by a retreat toward older technologies and production methods. The Biden administration's policies generated unprecedented private sector investment in manufacturing, particularly in electric vehicles and clean energy technologies. Companies announced over $1 trillion in private sector investments in clean energy and manufacturing during that period. But instead of building on that foundation, Trump's approach is essentially reversing course. His tariff policies are forcing companies to make defensive moves rather than strategic investments. His hostility toward electric vehicles is pushing the industry away from the technologies that will define transportation in the coming decades. And his misleading claims about manufacturing success are obscuring the real challenges and opportunities facing American industry. The consequences of this approach extend far beyond political messaging. When policymakers base decisions on inaccurate information about economic trends, they're likely to make choices that undermine long-term competitiveness. When companies are forced to focus on avoiding tariffs rather than investing in innovation, the entire economy suffers. And when the public is misled about the state of American manufacturing, it becomes harder to build consensus around the policies needed to maintain industrial leadership. Perhaps most importantly, Trump's claims reveal a fundamental misunderstanding of what drives manufacturing success in the modern economy. It's not enough to simply claim that factories are being built or that jobs are being created. What matters is whether those investments are positioning American companies to compete in the industries of the future, whether they're creating sustainable economic development, and whether they're building the foundation for long-term prosperity. By those measures, Trump's manufacturing policies are failing spectacularly. Instead of the unprecedented boom he claims to be delivering, What we're seeing is a strategic retreat from the investments and commitments that could have secured America's industrial future. And that's a failure that will have consequences long after Trump's political career is over. The truth about American auto manufacturing is complex, but it's not ambiguous. The real investment boom happened during the previous administration, driven by forward-looking policies and strategic thinking about the future of transportation. Trump's claims of unprecedented success are not just wrong, they're a distraction from the actual work of building a competitive, sustainable manufacturing economy. And that might be the most damaging part of this entire misleading narrative.